Hello and welcome to an Insight Intelligent Technology Chat. I'm Jillian Viner, Managing Editor of the Tech Journal, and today I'm joined by Juan Orlandini, our CTO of Insight North America. And we're going to be talking about something that is getting a lot of buzz right now, and it's not generative AI.
Well, it kind of is.
It kind of is.
It kind of is.
Kind of is, but it's about AI devices, and we're really in this fascinating moment right now. We're 4 years from the initial pandemic, everybody going remote. A lot of companies did device purchasing in a fury back then. Then we had the surge of generative AI. And now we've got Windows 10 end of support coming August 2025.
18 months.
Oh my goodness. Lots of things that are kind of catalysting at the same time. So kind of describe what is the moment that we're in right now.
Well, there's additional catalysts that are happening, all right? So there's a silicon war, is what I would like to describe it as, that we haven't had in a long time, all right? So there's competition from Intel, AMD, Samsung, Qualcomm, there's Apple with their silicon, and they're all starting to produce new capabilities, new devices that have exploding computational power to support new kinds of workloads that we're all now starting to really learn how to take advantage of, which is actually a great inflection point in the industry, because over the next year, 2, 3 years, we're going to change how we use devices, and it's all being laid down right now as we speak, and it's amazing. It's a fun time to be part of this.
Personal devices are like having a moment.
They are.
I feel like laptops haven't been that exciting in a long time.
They haven't. They've been boring. And actually, I was just at the Intel conference they had here in Phoenix, and Pat Gelsinger said it best on his main stage presentation. He said, you know, over the last few years, all we did is we increased the power by this or reduced this by this. Boring. And that was his words, boring. All right. And that's how he said it on the stage. And I was like, you're right, man. So Pat's fantastic. If you've never seen him speak, I highly recommend you watch some of his presentations. And now he's like, now we've actually changing a lot of the stuff. And it's exciting, it's new, it's fresh. So as a nerd, as a technologist, I am super excited about what's coming down the pipe here in a little bit.
So let's clarify some buzzwords, because this is new and we're hearing on-A devices, AI-enabled devices. Let's clear the understanding here of what we're talking about.
So it's new, but it isn't, is the way I would describe it. So if you have any modern phone, whether it's Apple or any of Apple's competitors, and you've taken a picture, you've actually used AI. That's what makes your pictures look amazing.
The portrait mode.
The portrait mode, or zooming in on a face, or identifying what the object is that you're pointing a camera. Any of those things, those are AI things, all right? So we've been using AI in our devices for a long time. What's changing is the kinds of AI that we're going to be using, and that's fueled by generative AI is part of it. But there's other capabilities that are being added to software systems that typically didn't have AI built into them. Everything's going to have AI in it. So whether you're using Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, any of those things, we already get it.
There's a lot of Microsoft.
Yeah.
So all Microsoft, basically.
Or Keynote, or Pages, or so
everything.
Those are Apple. They're all getting AI capabilities added to them. Adobe, if you look at anything, all right, they're all adding AI capabilities because it is transformative. The difference is that today, all of those ISVs, the software producers, are leveraging a public cloud to do those AI things. So if today you were to open up your Windows PC and hit the Copilot button on whatever you're using, it has to reach out to the cloud to be smart. And there's lag, there's latency, there's time, and that's not something that always you want to do.
When I have to wait for a response, I'm task switching.
I'm done. Right.
And now I've lost my productivity.
Exactly, right? Or if, like me, if you're on an airplane, the Wi-Fi's not working, right? That's just all of a sudden you get lopped off an arm because we're getting used to these capabilities. So what's happening is we're now embedding those capabilities into the device. And that's the transition that we're going through, all right, is how do we give that amazing experience, amazing productivity that we're getting from these AI services, but without requiring the lag, the latency, the connectivity, or any of those other things that come into that, and just doing it locally, just like you do with your phone today. Imagine if you took a picture and you had to wait for the cloud to actually make it look better.
I'm reflecting back of days of like the point and shoot. I got to go take it to Walgreens to get it developed. Like that's a long lag.
That's basically what we're doing right now.
We don't have that patience anymore.
No.
We want stuff now.
And so that's actually what's going to happen, right? It's just like the phone today. You take a picture and it looks amazing. That's what's going to happen with your devices, whatever device you happen to be using, whether it's a tablet or a PC or anything, right? And that's what the silicon is now enabling for us to be able to do.
So before we move on, what is AI-enabled device?
All right, so this is a terminology that was introduced by Intel, has been broadly adopted by the industry. It requires a CPU, so for Intel it would be any of their Lake processors, so Raptor Lake, Meteor Lake, or any of those kinds of things. From AMD, it's any of the AMD-based processors. Qualcomm's got their own. Apple's got the M processors, right? You're also going to need a GPU, a graphics processor unit that accelerates the graphics functions and all that, which today are being used for AI functions, but they're not purpose-built for that. They're built for graphics, all right? And then the third thing, which is an accelerator for AI kind of workloads. So in AI workloads, you do very specific kinds of math. Floating point math or integer math at very large scale. And depending on which one of the silicon makers you talk to, they're either a NPU, APU, neural engine, there's lots of names for them. And not to diminish the value that they're bringing, I call them LMNOPUs, right? Because there's so many names for them, all right? So these LMNOPUs are the third wheel of the triangle that you need in order to have this AI PC, right? And it's the combination of those three that actually enable the capabilities of these new workloads. So imagine, as an example, if you have some sort of a security software that today is relying on your CPU to do its security scanning, right? It's probably consuming a significant portion of it. If you're a PC user, you felt that, right? As you open up this amazing new device that was given to you by IT, and it's slow. And then it gets slower throughout the day while it's doing these things, and you're like, what's going on? Well, it's the security that we have to use today that's actually being run in the CPU that's stealing time away from you being able to do whatever your work is. Over the next short little while, what's going to happen is those functions are going to be relegated down to those specialized processors. GPU is going to take some of that. The accelerator, APU, NPU, whatever it is going to take the rest of it, right? So your CPU is going to become free to do the things that you want to do, right? Instead of the security stuff that IT needs it to be used for, right? So you're going to get the best of all of these things, and it's going to be amazing, right? There's another aspect that's also being introduced by Intel and the ecosystem is yardstick of measuring. How do I measure how good this thing is?
Yeah.
Right? And it's called TOPS, right? And it stands for trillion operations per second, right? And if you think about it, it's just amazing. And the yardstick is now, my device has got to do 30 TOPS, 30 trillion operations per second in order to be considered good enough to do AI PC. 30 trillion, right? And that's just mind-blowing if you think about it. And the only reason you can do that is because you have specialized processors that do those specific operations that fast, at that scale. So, and that's going to be the battle, all right? Who can bring you the combination of the CPU, the GPU, and a processing unit, LMNOPU, right? That's got the capability to do all of that computation, to offload all that work for it.
So when we say that these devices are being reimagined, that's not a marketing hyperbole, like that's true. We're really thinking about
yes and
how,
no.
Okay.
Yes and
okay.
no, all right? So they're being reimagined in terms of the capabilities that they're going to deliver to you, all right? So everything's gonna have the AI, as we talked about, right? But the form factor is not being reimagined all that much. You're still going to have probably a clamshell form factor where you open it up. You're going to have a keyboard, you're going to have a mouse of some sort, whether it's a trackpad or whatever it is, right? Or even a touch screen. None of that's going to change. So it's going to feel very familiar from that perspective.
Which is good.
Yes.
Because there's enough change.
Yeah.
And not all of us can be wearing our headsets on the plane like I know you do.
Oh, I do. And it's amazing.
But the chips, the processors are changing.
The processors are changing, and the capabilities that they are enabling are changing. Right. So the way we interact with the device is going to completely change. So for the last 30, 40 years, the way we interacted with the device is by actually very explicitly learning how to use each one of the applications. So this is how you use Excel, this is how you use PowerPoint, this is how you use mail.app, whatever your application is on your device. And you had to learn how to interact with it very specifically. What's amazing about generative AI is that now we can talk to it in human language, all right? And it can do more things. Like I can ask it, it's like, hey, this picture of this building was taken on a rainy day. Can you change it to a sunny day? And it will do that for you. Can you imagine how much work that would be in Photoshop?
I know exactly how much work that'd be in Photoshop.
That would be a ton of work, right? But now you can just tell the computers, like, hey, change it to a sunny day. And it does it. You're just like, oh, that's amazing. I'm done. I'm out. All right. Or if you're taking a meeting and you miss the first half hour of it, whatever, you can say, hey, summarize what's happened so far, and it will.
Yeah. Let me give you a quick cultural reference. I'm sure you've seen the movie The Devil Wears Prada.
Yes.
Remember when she comes in and says, "Where's that piece of paper I had in my hand the other day or yesterday?" I will use that sort of mentality with my co-pilot.
That's
like,
exactly
where was that email that someone mentioned this thing? And it saves me so much time and aggravation when it can find it for me.
Well, we can do that today.
Yep.
Okay. Well, so with Copilot today and Outlook, you can say, hey, find this email for me. Or if you go on vacation like I did last week, you come back, your mailbox is full. Yep. Like, oh my God, all right.
What was actually important here?
Yeah. What's important here is summarize this thread for me. And I was actually able to catch up after a week of being gone and the thousands of emails that I had in my inbox and say, all right, catch me up, help me go through this. And it did it, right? The difference is that I had to be at my home or in the hotel room and work from there. When I was on the plane, that didn't work so good.
Yeah.
All right. And that's what these AI PCs are going to change. All right. Is that they're going to have that kind of a that kind of a capability built into the device. And that's what's changing is the interaction and how we are reimagining that activity is what's changing.
I think you just answered my next question, which is, we're always talking about the next generation of PCs being able to enhance productivity and make our lives easier and better, faster. And you've really just explained like why this is different.
Yes.
This next wave of PCs sounds like it will actually live up to those promises.
It will. So we are at an interesting time, as we talked about, and that these capabilities are being just now introduced or imagined by the ISVs. We really don't know what all this is going to lead to. All right. So I would say that it's not the wrong time to start. It's actually the perfect time to start, especially for your power users or your advanced users. You want them to be enabling the workloads because this ecosystem is all figuring it out, and the feedback loop right now is amazing, all right? So if you want a ISV or a device maker to do something, this is the time to bring it in so you can actually figure out what you need them to do so they will actually build that for you, all right? And these yardsticks that I'm talking about, tops and all that, they're not likely to go massively up over the next year or 2 years or 3 years. So a device that you bring today might not live up to the promise of the marketing folks today.
Hey now.
But it will absolutely in very short order. And you have to go through the cycle, right, of bringing it in, evaluating it, making sure, getting your user base to adopt all these things. And you have to go through the learning on how to use this stuff. And actually, we have a funny internal story that kind of ties into that. So as you know, we were one of the early adopters of Microsoft Copilot. So middle of last year, we got 300 licenses as part of Microsoft's one of our big partners. And we deployed it to swath of users around the world. And it was our executives, and it was some of our power users, and then we also deployed it to some individual contributors. And we saw early adoption by most of them, and then all of a sudden we saw a drop in usage. And we started going, what? So the early adopters, some of them did some amazing things, and that's a whole nother story. But then we started looking at what happened with those other users.
Why'd you give up?
Yeah, why aren't you using this? This thing is amazing, right? They're like, I don't know how to use it. What do you mean you don't know how to use it? Just talk to it. just talk to it. And they're like, what do you mean just talk to it? And we'll tell it what to do. And so we had to give them a little bit of an education, and you have to rethink on how you actually use this stuff. So then we got a much wider range of licenses, I think 5,000, 6,000 licenses, something like that, and deployed it to an even broader spectrum of our users. And we're seeing the same pattern again, right? We're monitoring how, not what they're doing with it, but how much they're using it. And when we look at that, we also seen the same thing. There was a spike and a drop, and then we got to reach out to our individual users and retrain them and all that. And it's different for every population that we talk to, is how we have to educate them on all of this. And there's no manual for this, by the way. Right? There is no manual, right? So you got to teach them how to do prompt engineering almost, but it's not really. It's not the fancy prompt engineering.
Well, we did a survey not that long ago and asked folks about generative AI, and the lack of training or understanding came out as a big thing.
It is.
And I think you mentioned back then that there's no manual, but the other part of it too that we talked about was that it's behavior changing.
It is.
You have to kind of relearn how to work your day, and it's almost like having an intern by your side. And
it's part of it, right? It's like having an intern,
Yeah.
but it's also, it frees up some of your time, so you got to rethink, what am I going to use that extra time for? How do I, and people think it's not, well, all of a sudden I can reduce my workforce. It's like, no, there's plenty of work, right? What we're doing is getting rid of some of the drudgery, right? So the point of all of this is that you better start getting some of those AI PCs in-house today, so you can start learning how these things are going to affect your workforce and the populations that you have in your organization. We all have different organizational structures, so that you can then enable them to take advantage of these amazing capabilities. If you don't start today and you wait for Gen 2, Gen 3, you're going to be stuck, right? And you're going to have to play catch up, and your competitors are probably going to beat you in the market for whatever it is that you do. So we're very, very deliberately going to be bringing them in-house and evaluating them, giving them to some of our populations, intentionally different kinds of users, so that we can be patient zero, so we can then share that with our customers as well.
So we talked about the benefits to the workers, and you just kind of alluded to the other side of it, which is the competitive advantage. But there's other real advantages for businesses too when you talk about these AI devices.
Absolutely. And there's the productivity gains that you're going to get from this. I think in the media, we've covered it in lots of different ways. But there's also an ESG aspect to it, an environmental social governance aspect to it. These devices, because they're offloading some of these workloads from that CPU that's a general workhorse, you've probably felt that you have your laptop on your lap, and you start doing some Photoshop.
Why is it so hot?
Oh my gosh, it starts burning your lap. So you buy the pillow, or you do whatever you
got fans going.
You got fans, exactly, right? That's going to go away. So battery life is going to increase exponentially. Yeah, it will not surprise me that in the next year or two, we're going to see devices that have 30, 40 hours of battery life. It's going to be amazing.
Wow.
Right? We already have devices today that do almost a full day, 20 hours, all right? And that's going to be transformative just by itself, right? So think about how much power saving we're going to be doing. And if you have a large fleet of devices, think of what you're doing for the environment by having that much less power, longer life the device that doesn't have to be plugged into a main power line almost all the time, which is what we got used to, right? So there's a huge amount advantage on that side. The device makers are also being much more intentional in making their devices repairable. So that's one of the yardsticks we should hold them accountable to, is that, hey, for a little while there was a trend where these things were like literally just locked up, glued together, and then if you try to fix them, you couldn't because they'd just fall apart, right? Now it's taking a full swing back, which it should, to where I can repair it, upgrade it, do all those things so that it has a longer life. So there's a ESG aspect to that side as well. And because they are so capable, they're probably going to live longer.
That'd be a nice change.
Right? So instead of being every 3 years, you're like, oh my gosh, I need a new one. It might be 4 years, 5 years. So you're going to get some cost savings from that side as well. So this is the thing that's really going to be thinking about. And it will be very practical for organizations to buy the most current device for their power users. And a year or two, hand them down to their general knowledge workers that don't need all of the most current generation stuff, and refresh that way instead of refreshing by buying new devices for everybody.
Let me ask you about something else you mentioned earlier, which is security. We did another survey to ask about how people feel about AI devices entering the workforce, and generally speaking, people are optimistic. But when we kind of get more into the minutia of maybe what their concerns are, privacy and security did rise to the top, which probably isn't surprising. So what does AI devices mean for security for the business and then maybe for the individual as well?
Slightly different things. For the individual, it's going to be really nice that all of that AI capability is being done locally. None of your private data is being sent to some cloud to be processed, and you don't know what's happening when you send it up there, right? And that's not a negative on the cloud providers, whether it's one of the hyperscalers or a different cloud. You just don't know. All right. Now they all have amazing security and all that other stuff, but there's a comfort factor in knowing that none of that is happening. It's just it's going to be happening locally. So private data is private data. That's also true for very sensitive workloads that you might have. So imagine if you're in manufacturing or healthcare or any of those things, knowing that your data doesn't have to traverse networks or land in another location is probably actually really good. Right. Exactly. I mean, it's complete. You don't have to worry about that. It's all being done locally, right? So you don't have to account for that in your security posture, right? So that's going to be really, really good. But there's another thing. Because you have so much computational power on the device, now we're going to be able to introduce higher defensive postures to the devices themselves.
That feels like a reason alone to invest in these devices.
100%. And the whole ecosystem of security providers, they're ramping up capabilities that are just astonishing, all right? Because now they can actually do some more predictive AI-based analysis of what's happening on the device without having to go to a cloud to actually say, hey, have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? That device knows how that happens, all right? And it'll do it in a way that doesn't steal away your capabilities from you as an individual. What we talked about before, right? Your laptop's not going to become a nuclear furnace while it's doing this, all right?
Hey, I never had to turn the heat on in the winter.
Yeah, well, now you might. Well, do you have winter here in Phoenix ever?
We have a little bit of a winter, yeah.
Well,
it gets
what's
cold.
winter, like 70?
No, it gets to like the 20s and 30s at night.
Oh. So that's actually going to be really good. All right, is it all here yet? No, but it's imminent. Like we're in April right now. It would not surprise me that when these PCs come out here in just the next few months, you're going to have announcements from all of the security providers that say, hey, on this new device, I have this new amazing capability, but you have to have the new device in order to do that. And your old devices are going to become nuclear furnaces if you try to run that that same capability. All right, they'll melt through the desk, and it's not good.
It's not going to be good. It's going to be new PC art of just melted PCs.
Yeah, just buying new furniture alone would be terrible, right? So yeah, you absolutely are going to get amazing capabilities from that, and IT departments are going to start really being able to enhance the security posture, which we have to. We are in a cyber war right now. All right, and if you don't think we are, you haven't been reading all the news, and we have lots and lots of material and all of that because we see it every day, right? And the number one vector for attack for our clients is the devices themselves. It's not the data center, it's not the cloud, it's the devices. So we have to wrap them up around the best security posture we can.
Yeah. Let's nerd out again for a moment, because we talked about some of the processors. I don't know that we talked that much about ARM technology and kind of where that's changed. We mentioned a little bit from you're used to the phones, but like what is that architecture and why might we see that more in devices now?
So ARM's actually been around since the 80s, believe it or not. So it's not new, all right? What's new is that it's actually being introduced into laptops and PCs, all right? Apple made the transition to them, 3-4 years ago now, maybe 5 years ago. There's a plethora of providers that are now going to introduce them for the Windows side of the house, right? There's a difference between how ARM does compute, and this isn't a technical conversation, so I'm not going to get into the really nerdy stuff on it, versus Intel and AMD on the x86 or x64 instruction set. Mm-hmm. There's a misconception that ARM, by nature, is less computationally intensive, so it's more power efficient than x86. Is it today? For many workloads, absolutely, but for others, the x86 architecture is not. At least it is good, all right? What ARM has as an advantage today is the total power draw that you use in order to do a set of workloads, all right? But both Intel and AMD are also keenly aware of this, and they're competing on that total power draw so that for the same power budget, you can get the same computation done. So you're going to see this leapfrogging effect. And this is healthy. This is super healthy for us as an industry, that we now have competition on processor architecture and the capabilities that each one of those introduces so they can leapfrog at you and make it better for us, all right? So this is going to be really good. The real difference, though, is that you can't natively run an application that was written for x86 on ARM processor, or an application that was written for ARM on x86. They're completely different, right? So what you have to introduce is a translation layer, right? Apple's done this, Windows has this, where you can take an x86 app, run it on ARM, but it's got to do this translation. It's got to emulate the x86 processor. And that reduces the performance of that application because it's not running natively on the thing. So what we have is we have this window where applications are, if it's not native for that processor, has to then be emulated, so it's going to perform a little bit, and your power draw is going to go up, and so that's what we have to wait for and work through, is how to manage that transition. All right, now that emulation today is astonishingly good. As a nerd, I look at this and I'm like, how would they do that? How did they do that? It's amazing. All right, so for many workloads, it's actually going to be indistinguishable, right? The performance. Because if you think about it, we've been able to use Word since the early 90s, right? Then think about the processor power that we had in the 90s. It's negligible compared to what we have now. Mm-hmm. So can you run like Word or any of those kinds of applications on a translation here? Absolutely. Is it going to perform as good? Probably not. But is it going to be noticeable? Probably not, right? Other applications that are more power intensive or resource intensive, you're probably going to notice that. So it's going to matter what you use them for. So that's the big difference between ARM and Intel and AMD and all of those other guys. It's a fun time. It's interesting.
It's a fun time.
Yeah, but here's the thing: we're going to get amazing capabilities because they're going to be competing against each other, and that's a good thing. Which is good, right? And we should encourage that by buying both sides, yeah. Right?
Let's talk about that before we end here. There's going to be a lot of options and a lot of stuff that's going to be coming out. You mentioned that there might be some announcements even from software developers coming out in the next few months. If I'm looking to refresh my device fleet right now, what am I considering? What are my top considerations when I'm looking at AI devices?
That triple combination that I talked about, all right, is you want to make sure that you have one of the latest gen CPUs, capable GPU for the kind of workload that you're going to use. So if you're doing heavy graphics processing, you absolutely want to do a GPU. If you're on more the consumer side, if you're going to be doing gaming, the GPU is where it's going to be at, all right? And then the third one is you're going to have that accelerator, whether it's an MPU, APU, LMNOPU. You have to have that, all three of those, all right? And then there's that yardstick, the TOPS. You want to have 30 TOPS as the yardstick for a Copilot-enabled device, all right? Microsoft Copilot. For Apple, the yardstick's slightly different. They don't actually talk about TOPS because they just don't. It's a different world. On that one, they already have that capability. They've had it for 4 or 5 years with their M processors. They already have the neural engine, is what they call their accelerator. Slightly different thing. So on the Apple ecosystem, they're already there. You're using it. You're good. All right. On the Windows side, you need to look at the 3 options, and then you're going to have plenty of choice in there. All right. You're going to have the different form factors: small, big, screen sizes, storage, all that other stuff. But you're gonna. What I would encourage the audience to do is to get a set of devices in house, bring them in, evaluate them for the kinds of workloads that you're going to be providing, and then start getting them out there so you can learn what these things really are going to do to your workforce. And we actually have a loaner program. I don't know if you know this. So
I do, but go ahead and let us know about it.
So if a customer wants to evaluate these things, we can actually provide a device for 30 days free of charge. We're happy to give them to a customer. So bring it in, try it out. If you like it, send us that one back, and then you actually will know what you're doing and what it's going to do for you. So that would be an easy way to actually consume and adopt this as well.
Wonderful. Well, Juan, thank you so much for your time today. This is a really exciting topic, and you're really the best man to be talking about this stuff. So appreciate all of your knowledge and geeking out with me. It was really a pleasure.
Well, I love doing this, so thank you for having me.
Thank you. If you're looking for more information on AI devices, just visit insight.com. We'll see you next time.